Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Hi, everyone. It's Simone Morris, host of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm delighted to be back for season 7. I've had a wonderful summer break, and I really hope that you've had a great summer break as well. If you have, please feel free to go over to LinkedIn, join the Power of Owning Your Career podcast group, and tell me about your summer. Tell me how you worked on your career. I'll tell you how I've been working on my career this summer. I have done some professional development. I am a certified women-owned business, and so I belong to this organization, WeBank, Women Business Enterprise National Council. And so I'm in this professional development program that's about 8 weeks long, and it's focused on how to be a better entrepreneur, a better CEO, I should say a better CEO. So I have been doing that program and really enjoying taking advantage of professional development. In your careers, you've got to make time for professional development. It's important because that's how you will level up in your career. So I'm pleased that this summer I took some time to really say yes to opportunities to really grow as a business owner, as a CEO, as an employer to be, and just excited about the changes that have come about from that. I'm doing a better job of really enforcing boundaries. I think boundaries are important in our careers. And that means being able to say no when you need to say no. And that can be a tough thing to do in your career. So boundaries is another thing that I focused on. It doesn't always feel good because there may be some guilt that pops up for you because you're used to saying yes. And so, I want to encourage you to do some boundary work. I listened to Rachel Rodgers. I read her book over the summer, and I really dug the podcast that talked about boundaries. I can put that in the show notes, but that was something that was important to me, to create boundaries for myself, for family, and for clients that I have. So I want to encourage you in your career to really think about boundaries and boundaries that you need to set. So I had a marvelous summer. I went camping for the first time this summer. So that was certainly interesting and exciting. We had a great time as a family. I got to tell you, I'm afraid of frogs, but apart from that frog incident, it was a great time. And I hope to do more activities, more fun things with the family as the year continues. So I'm excited. Listen, I'm excited about season 7, and shout out to Jen Eds because she really inspired and empowered me to take a break from the podcast. So to take the summer off, she said, it's your podcast. And I think sometimes I forgot that it is my podcast. And so it is something I am passionate about, teaching others how to really be in the driver's seat for their careers. Is so, so important. One of the highlights of my summer was speaking to a group at Heineken during the summer, and we talked a lot about careers. There was a lot of passion and engagement around careers and got me all jazzed up. The last time I was so jazzed up, I wrote a book. So stay tuned for what will happen because I'm coming off of that high from speaking to the group Heineken USA, a wonderful group, their employee resource group. Spoke with them about careers and gave them lots of resources to leverage for careers, but just, really signaled to me that I'm doing what I was meant to do. I feel good about it at the heart and at the head. And I want to do more of that work. So I hope that you will stay with me for season 7, because I'm going to be interviewing some exciting leaders, sharing their career stories, their advice for you on how to level up and what I learned from this summer is that there's lots of people that want to do great things in their career, but for some reason or another, they're afraid to make the change, to step out on faith. And I want to encourage you to really bet on yourself, to really believe in yourself and bet on yourself to take risk, RISKS, in your career. So lots of learnings, and I'll be sharing a lot more of that with you this season. Now, I want to go back to some of the things that I learned this summer about careers. And there's a couple things that I want to say. You need to make time to learn. I talked about that in the beginning of this episode, that it's important to make the time to learn. You can get caught up in just doing your job or just working and hustling to just, continue with life. But you need to pump the brakes and to take time out to learn. That is how you're going to grow in your career. So that's one thing, really making the time to learn. Not only making the time to learn, but also making time to implement. I have taken a great deal of courses over the years, and I have a notebook full of ideas to implement. And so one of the new promises I'm making to myself is to really make a plan for implementation. So as I take these different professional development opportunities, create a list of the top 3 things that I'm going to implement from the program, whatever program that might be, top 3 things, and have an accountability partner to make sure that I implement what I learned. So again, the process I would say is, number 1, raise your hand and take advantage. Even if you have to pay your own money to learn something new, I want to encourage you to do that. But when you go and you learn something new, make a buddy, make a friend in the class and ask to be accountability partners. Then decide your top 3 things that you are going to take away from the training that you want to implement, and have that person hold you accountable for doing the 3 things that you said you were going to do. Now, you can also be an accountability partner for the other person and hold them accountable as well. I think it's important to implement what you are learning, and I'm certainly learning lots, and I hope that you are learning a lot. Again, if you are learning something that you want to share with me or share with the rest of the listeners that you think is cool to share, go over to the LinkedIn Power of Owning Your Podcast group and just share in there. The plan for the season is to continue to give you access to the guests who are on the show, as well as myself, just really showing up in that space and communicating and growing together. One of the trainings that I did, if you're an entrepreneur, was the Bank of America Women's Entrepreneurship Program, a fabulous program through eCornell, and lots of good nuggets there. I mentioned the WeBank program. The program that I took is called We Thrive. So if you're an entrepreneur, that's a great program to take. The other thing I want to suggest to you is to make time to read. I have set a boundary, and that is every night I'm carving out 30 minutes to read. What a game changer that is, because I love books. I'm always collecting books. I have a massive library at home, and I need to start reading all these books that I have. So I said to myself, how am I going to start reading if I do not make time to read? So now every night there is a 30-minute slot for reading. I'm adding meditation and journaling as well. I think those are good tools to just reflect on where you are on your career journey or your life's journey. So reading is one of the things that I have made time for. And I actually have an accountability partner for reading. Shout out to my bestie, Bridget, because we are reading and educating ourselves together, and we pick books together and we share the learnings that we're getting from the books. Again, back to the professional development that I talked about, the learning and implementing that. You also want to implement what you read. When you read, if it's not just for some fun and a relaxation, but to grow, make sure you jot down again the top 3 things that you want to implement from the book that you're reading, and get an accountability partner to help you implement that, and not just to be a talker. We don't want to be a talker. Speaking of being a talker, I also this summer pulled back out my Wayne Dyer book about Excuses Be Gone. If you don't want to read that book, go ahead and listen to the recording. It's on the web. You can download or listen to the recording of Wayne Dyer sharing the excuses that we come up with that get in our ways. And by the way, we all have excuses. So I found that a good book to revisit. And I'm curious again, I want to hear more from my listeners this season. So I am going to encourage you and always point you back to LinkedIn, because honestly, that is a platform that I'm on the most. I'm on all different social media channels. This podcast is on Instagram as well, but I will tell you that I do show up on LinkedIn quite a bit. So that's why there's a discussion group on LinkedIn, and I want to encourage you and invite you, if you've got something to share, a takeaway that you took from the episode that you want to share, come on over to LinkedIn and let's have a conversation about this podcast. Let's continue the conversation in LinkedIn, actually. So I'm happy to be back with season 7. There are fabulous guests lined up for you. We will be sharing a new episode every Sunday at every Sunday morning. There's a new episode available at around 9 a.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time. You can look for those episodes, and you'll be hearing a lot more from me, and you will be hearing some shifts from the previous seasons. You'll be hearing some shifts because as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I hired the podcast expert to review and provide recommendations to me. So I will be implementing those recommendations. I think I'm going to call this episode Implementation. And that's because I'm big on implementing what I've learned. So to summarize what I've talked about in the Welcome Back episode, number 1, I'm psyched about season 7. Number 2, I've encouraged you to take advantage of professional development opportunities and to learn from those opportunities. I've encouraged you to read more, read more, implement. Oh, I also wanted to say, make time to connect with others. I think it's important to make time to network, because with that networking, you are going to build strategic relationships. So make time to connect with others. And it's not always about immediately asking the other person for how they can help you, but also to just have an opportunity to meet new people and things just unfold. I almost forgot to tell you, over the summer as well, I've been focused on a children's book. I have a new children's book that's coming out in the next month. I've done it with the fabulous Julie Kratz, and it's called Charlotte Wants a BFF. So please do support me on this new endeavor as a children's book author. I am trying many different things. That's one of the best parts of being an entrepreneur or being in the driver's seat for your career. You get to try a lot of different things. You get to lean into your interests. So even if you're an intrapreneur, I would say lean into your interest and try to work in different departments, different locations with different people, and say yes to opportunities, volunteer to lead an employee resource group or whatever it is. Try out these different opportunities so you can really hone in on what your key strengths are. So as I said, this summer, I wrote a children's book with Julie Kratz, and it's called Charlotte Wants a BFF. We are releasing it next month. So you can go to the inclusionschool.com website and go to the book menu and read all about it and pre-order the book. Very excited about doing something different and just an extension of my talent. And I want to encourage you to do something different. The reason that came up in what I was saying to you is because Julie and I made time to connect with one another. We actually connected on LinkedIn. and a beautiful friendship formed out of that. And we host a podcast, the Inclusion School podcast. So I have 2 podcasts, everybody, not just the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, but I also host the Inclusion School podcast with Julie Kratz. So from that connection from LinkedIn, by the way, we created that podcast, and now we've written a book together, and we plan to do more books as well. So I want to encourage you to connect with others. So just a quick recap again, make time to learn, make time to implement your learnings, get an accountability partner, make time to read, make time to connect with others. And those are key learnings that really resonate with me coming off of the summer break and getting ready to go back to school, if you will. It's that time in the US, that is, it's the back to school time. So very excited about what's to come in this season, and know that there will be lots of learnings, lots of guests who share their exciting stories, plus leadership lessons, career lessons, really, for you to take notes and implement. Go through, I want to encourage you to go back through the previous 6 seasons and listen to episodes and get learnings. I, from time to time, will go back and listen to episodes and take some learnings forward. So I want to encourage you to do that as well. Again, I'm back. I'm excited to be back for season 7. Get ready for our first guest, who is LaTanya Langley. She is the general counsel for Big Corporation, and I really enjoyed talking to her. So that's the first episode that's going to drop. That's it for now. Again, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. But if you want to have a conversation with me, feel free to go to careerbreakthroughcall.com and schedule a meeting, and we can have a conversation of how I can help you. I am a career coach. I also facilitate leadership development programs. I speak on how to get in the driver's seat. So I'm excited to help you level up in your career. If you want to have a conversation about how I can help you in your particular situation to get into the driver's seat and to make some changes, please do book a call with me at careerbreakthroughcall.com. That's it for now. And please do continue to listen to the podcast, subscribe, share, and review. By the way, if you leave a review, leave a message in the discussion group, and I'll be sure to give you a shout out on the podcast. So thank you so much, everyone. And I am thrilled to be back for a wonderful season 7 of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.